Okay, so next up, lore, okay? It's the reason that so many fans, myself included, absolutely love From Software games because the story isn't told in cutscenes. It's intricately woven into the world, you know? It's like a random line of dialogue from an NPC. It's a item description. It's actual bosses and how they move and how they operate in the world. So we're going to dive into that very shortly with two lore experts. But first, we should remember that From Software had a little bit of help in crafting this game world by George R.R. Martin, fantasy author extraordinaire. So to remind ourselves a little bit about that backstory, here's a CGI trailer for you.
Peggy 16.
It happened an age ago. But when I recall, I see it true. On a night of wintry fog, the rune of death was stolen. And the demigods began to fall. Starting with Godwyn the Golden. Queen Mariko was driven to the brink. The shattering ensued, a war that wrought only darkness. The Elden Ring was broken. But by whom? And why? What could the demigods ever hope to win by warring? The conqueror of the stars, General Radar. And the blade of Mikkel and Melina the Seventh. These two were the mightiest to remain, and locked horns in combat. But there would be no victor. And so, we inhabit a fractured world, awaiting the arrival of the Elden Lord. Unless, of course, thou shouldst take the crown.
Lower School is in session, and we are joined by Elissa, the Senior Community Manager for Elden Ring at Bandai Namco, and the lore hunter, the lore expert extraordinaire. I mean, it's right there in the title. How are you guys?
Good.
Doing
Awesome.
great, thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So, first question, really simple, just to get things started. What is the Elden Ring?
All right. So, and I want to preface any of the questions by saying this is what we know so far, because From is very good about hiding their best secrets. So, It's not a guarantee that it's 100% correct, but it's what we know right now. And the Elden Ring is the metaphysical embodiment of reality, basically, and it manifests as representing these different facets of the world through these runes, which we will definitely learn more about in the game. And the Elden Ring was shattered under mysterious circumstances, and the demigods took the great runes.
I mean, thank you so much for the note about it's all speculation, but isn't that the reason we love these games as well? The fact that a lot of things are never quite confirmed. We just kind of make it up as we go along, what the fans
Exactly.
think that they think it's going to be. All right, so next question. What is the Golden Order?
So the Golden Order, it's a system put in place by the demigods to govern the world, and it represents how they have used the Elden Ring to create order in the physical world, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Elissa, have you got anything from your expert opinion to add?
Obviously, I can't give away too much here in this kind of segment, nor do I want to, make this as kind of like a critique of anybody's interpretation of the lore so far, because there's still a lot that isn't known. I can say that this is largely correct from what we have learned so far, that the Golden Order is indeed another name for the Greater Will, the Elden Ring, the current order of the world that was shattered by both the shattering of the war and also the breaking of the Elden Ring itself.
And so we know a little bit, I think, about them so far, but can we dig in a little deeper about who the demigods are?
Sure. The demigods are, I think most of them, and this is another point that I'm not 100% sure on, but most of the demigods are the children of Marika, who is the god queen of the lands between. And if and most of the demigods are her children, I'm not 100% sure, but they took the great runes. Her children took the great runes after the Elden Ring was shattered, and as Elissa mentioned, they started a war called the Shattering. But even with these great runes that they were using on all sides, they couldn't really get a victor out of it, and so there's still a stalemate to this day between these various demigods with the great runes.
And those children
Yeah.
are, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there. I'll just say that, like, in the history of the world of the land beyond, land between, excuse me, please forgive me. The demigods were considered to be all the children of Queen Marika were considered to be demigods. But in the game specifically, you'll find that demigods also refers to anyone who holds a great rune at this moment. I'm not going to say too much about anything about that, but just like if you hold a great rune right now, you are a demigod.
All right.
Every time someone says, I'm not going to get too much into that, we want them to get into that. But then again, this game is out very shortly, so maybe we can just wait a little bit longer.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was like,
It's
keep
like,
talking there. I want to hear a little bit more news
I
about
know,
that.
please go on, seriously.
Oh no. They have the sniper in the window, so no. I'm kidding.
Okay, so maybe this is a simpler question then, but who are the tarnished?
So the tarnished they're people who used to come from the lands between. So in the lands between, grace from the greater will and the Elden Ring manifests itself in golden eyes for those who dwell there. And at a certain point, some people in the lands between lost the gold in their eyes and they became tarnished and they were subsequently exiled. And then many generations later, the tarnished descendants, they're called back to the lands between by the greater will and the guidance of grace to become the Elden Lord, and I presumably to end the stalemate.
Would I be right in assuming there's like a giant corkboard in your house with like pins and strings stuck in it, just figuring all this out after every trailer launches?
There's like a digital version, but yeah, it's a lot of like framing through trailers and like zooming in 300% on photos because a lot of it is found sort of contextually and not just explained through dialogue or text.
I mean, that's just so much fun in itself, though, isn't it? Just
It
putting it all
is, yeah.
together. So there are tarnished in the world apart from the player character, though.
Yeah, there's a bunch of tarnished, and it's made more populous probably by the fact that the tarnished are immortal because of the guidance of grace. It's keeping them alive in their pursuit of the Elden Ring. And the director of Elden Ring, Hidetaka Miyazaki, he said that the other tarnished in the game are sort of to be considered like other protagonists, basically, and they're basically meant to give other viewpoints, and they're supposed to give different feelings and opinions on the idea of being called back to the lands between, as well as how they even feel about the Elden Lord and the whole situation.
And you kind of touched on it a little. Sorry, Elissa, did you want to add to that?
Oh, I was just going to say that like the number of tarnished that you'll meet in the lands between are many and numerous. Some of them you have already actually seen in some of the trailers that have gone out, even if you didn't know that. Um, I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody's reaction to the particular identity of a couple who we've seen repeatedly in the trailers.
Oh, the intrigue, the intrigue. There's just like everyone's brains are whirring now after hearing that.
Right.
Okay, so you mentioned it a little bit, but can we talk about the guidance of grace and what that is?
Sure, and Alyssa may have some extra points to bring in, but from what we can tell so far, the guidance of grace is what brought the tarnished to the lands between upon dying, as I said, and I think it's a manifestation of the greater will. And in the lands between, the guidance of grace sort of points you toward the direction you're supposed to go mechanically in the game. We saw how at checkpoints and stuff you can sort of see that golden trail. That's the guidance of grace sort of leading the tarnished on their pursuit of becoming the Elden Lord.
Yeah, the belief in the lands between is that the Golden Order, the Greater Will, fate has a plan in mind, in the minds of most of the people who live in this land. And that is evidenced by this guiding grace that is supposedly has an intention to lead the Tarnished to become the Elden Lord. Um, yeah, I think I can say that much.
And all of the tarnished can follow the guidance of grace. They can all see it.
No, actually, there are some tarnished who can no longer see the guidance of grace. Your character is even considered a bit unusual in these days when they find themselves in the lands between, because yeah, some tarnished have lost the ability to see grace.
Why is that? Is it because it fades over time or something else?
It's a very interesting question. I wish I could answer it for you.
Ah! Well, it's worth a shot, you know. Okay, so how about Melina? Can we talk a little bit about her character and her role in the world?
Sure. Melina, and it sort of ties into what Alyssa was just saying about our character being a little different. Melina is this mysterious character who appears to be watching over us at our arrival to the lands between, and she's not one of the finger maidens who traditionally come and greet the tarnished, I guess, or hook them up once they get to the lands between. She has made an accord with us where she wants us to sort of take her to the foot of the Erd tree because she no longer has a corporeal form, and it seems like she has some sort of tragic backstory and some issues with her mom, who I'm sure will play into the story pretty heavily. And she also gives us Torrent, which is obviously a huge deal for Elden Ring.
Basically, she has a lot of power, doesn't she? So that would
Yeah.
suggest that there's more to her character perhaps than meets the eye.
Oh, for sure.
It's not just anyone who can turn runes into strength, as she puts it. And there's an interesting bit of something about Torrent in that this is not a character that has just appeared out of nowhere for your personal convenience. There's some hints in the story that maybe Torrent has had a previous master, rider, owner? Question mark? Hmm.
Oh, everything you say, I'm just like, please elaborate. Go on.
Yeah, yeah, keep going.
I apologize. I
but you're
apologize.
but you're right because it almost seems like in what we've seen so far, it's almost like Melina listens to Torrent. Like Torrent has an opinion on your character, and Melina is actually influenced by that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
it
that's
seems like
accurate to
that.
say.
Yeah, he chose us,
Go
is
ahead.
I think how Melina puts it. Like it was specific. So I find that very nice to be chosen by Torrent. Torrent seems like a solid bro.
Torrent's a stand-up guy.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you can tell us about Torrent, Elissa?
No, but I will definitely agree. If you are a good enough person to be chosen by Torrent, you can't be all bad, right?
Okay, well, let's shift gears a little bit and maybe talk about the Rune of Death and what that
All right.
might be about.
Yeah, so the Rune of Death is kind of mysterious at this point. Its theft led to the murder of the demigods, including Godwin, as was mentioned in the story trailer that we saw, and by this mysterious group of cloaked figures during is something during the Night of Black Knives.
Mm.
And it seems like the Rune of Death is probably related to that. Miyazaki did mention in an interview that the demigods removed their fated deaths from the Elden Ring, and it seems like that is probably tied to the Rune of Death. And sort of interestingly for me, it seems like perhaps because they removed the Rune of Death from the Elden Ring and the Fated Deaths, that they opened themselves up for something like this to happen.
Elissa, any thoughts?
This is a particularly tricky and interesting subject to discuss in terms of spoiler territory, of
Mm-hmm.
course, because the Rune of Death is a very powerful object in the world of Elden Ring. And all of the things that the lore hunter has said so far are basically accurate as far as anybody knows. There's a great mystery in the lands between of exactly who is behind these particular horrible happenings that instigated the shattering and the breaking of the Elden Ring. And I think that it's fair to say that you've already seen some characters who are intimately involved in this mystery, but I won't say who.
So
No,
tantalizing.
I know. But you know what I really love about these games, though, is that in however many hours that it takes us all to complete the game from now, we probably still won't have all the answers or the answers to the questions that we're
Yeah.
asking right now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Is there any?
possible.
It's possible. Well, you already know the answers, Elissa, probably.
Look, I tell you, like, I can't say that I know the mind of the great Miyazaki himself. I'm sure that there are mysteries, even from those of us who are more in the know than others, that only he is aware of.
Yeah.
Well, here's an open question to both of you, though. What compels you about the lore of Elden Ring?
Sure. I mean, the big thing, like, because I make tons of content about uh, the Souls games and Elden Ring specifically, because they offer something that I don't find too much elsewhere. And part of it is the lore is how it is delivered. It's not just through like story, like cutscenes, you get it through item descriptions and dialogues, but it's also where you find the items and under what context and circumstance, and it lets you draw your own conclusions because it's not 100% laid out to you. And even once you collect all the available information, there's still like maybe 90% of the story, which then leads you to make some speculation, as Miyazaki has stated that he intends for players to fill in those gaps. And what that does is it leads to people having different interpretations, and I think it makes everyone's experience and understanding of the lore just a little bit unique, and that obviously means that years later it's still interesting to talk with people and to figure it out.
Beautifully put.
Yeah, there's a delicate sorry, excuse
Words
me.
are hard.
There's a lot of fine detail in the
Perfect.
lore that I really appreciate. Hey, and there's also just a lot of depth and breadth, which is very much appreciated. You won't find characters who are only pushing one viewpoint in the lore of Elden Ring. There's a
Mm.
broad range of perspectives and opinions about the state of the world, how it should be, what is justice, what is right, what is wrong.
Yeah.
And I find those particular explorations very intriguing and wonderful to delve into and think about. It's one of the reasons I really love the lore of this game.
That's awesome. I'd
Yeah.
never actually thought about it like that before. The different
Yeah.
perspectives, and there's almost like unreliable narrators peppered in throughout the
Mhm.
story as well. That's so
Yeah.
cool. So, Lore Hunter, is there anything else that's kind of caught your eye that you're excited to find out more about?
I mean, I'm excited about so many different things. This is a new IP from, my favorite developer, and it's a whole new world. And it's been, 6 years since they released like an RPG, and it's a fantasy RPG. So you have all these kingdoms and all these various places. And I am someone who particularly enjoys like the noun soup that you get into with fantasy, and just having all these new things. And just that first time when you like read about like, oh, this weird order of knights, and then it compels you to look into it more, and then eventually you'll figure it out, and then maybe someone will have a different opinion about what's going on. And so that's what I really look forward to, is just the vastness of the world that they helped make with George R. R. Martin, which makes me even more excited, because it's just, he is obviously a master at world building, and From Software are masters of the video game medium, and together I think it's just going to be just great.
So, so true, yeah. And Elissa, is there anything, last question, anything else you can tell us, please, about what you know so far?
I will say, let's see, gosh, what could I tell you that won't get me in too much
Putting you in the
trouble
spot, I'm
here?
sorry.
No, it's all right. I think that there's some really interesting things going on in Limgrave. There's a very fascinating political situation that's developing. We have hinted about this a little bit in some of the tweets that we've been putting out about the Lord High of the castle of Limgrave, and his titles and his self-appointed titles and things like that. But I think that there's something truly interesting about the situation that's going on there. And there's some very unlikely characters who think of themselves as playing a very grand role in the whole situation that I hope will be entertaining for everyone.
Amazing. Thank you both so, so much. It's a conversation I could have all day, frankly, but I will let you
Yeah.
both go. And yeah, we'll see you on the other side. We'll see you in the lands between.